Alright guys, another short little video. Um, get into how I built the axles, what I did, what I started with. The trailer had four good tires and wheels with trailer brakes on all four. The axles were too small for my liking. I knew I was going to add a little bit of weight to the trailer, so I wanted to beef up the axles. I wanted to make them stronger. You can't really take an axle and make it stronger. You kind of have to build your own axles or go out and buy axles. And a lot of the strong axles are made out of round tubing and they have an arc to them or they're spring loaded. And I didn't want to spend that kind of money. I'm trying to keep this build as inexpensive as I can, but do things the right way. So I did a little bit of research on axles, and square tubing axles, if built right, can hold about 3,500 pounds a piece, and there's two of them. So I figured that would cover this trailer build. The axles I made out of 2 inch by 2 inch box tubing that's quarter wall thick. I had good hubs and bearings, so I went out and I found spindles that matched them. But I got my box tubing, I got my four new spindles. The most time consuming part was measuring it, setting the tires there, figuring out where the spindle needed to be welded, how long that piece of box tubing needed to be, getting it mocked up, getting the right length cut, drilling a little hole for a plug weld on both sides. And you get your new spindle, and it comes with a sleeve that sleeves into this 2 inch box tubing really nice. There's also a little ridge inside the box tubing from when they made the box tubing, and you'll have to grind that out. Double check it with a T-square or an angle. Make sure that thing is straight. You want your tires to run straight with your axles. If you try and square your tires to your trailer, if you try and square your tires to your trailer, you're gonna have major problems. Square your tires to your axle so that your tires are running straight with your axles. You can make your axles straight with your trailer later. Plug weld that little hole that you drilled, and then cover your spindle with a rag and duct tape the end of that rag on there real good, and solid weld around the end of that square tubing to your spindle. But make sure you cover it with something, wrap it all with tape, something. As you weld the little pieces of slag, you don't want them sticking to your spindle. Um, you'd have to file them off later, and then your spindle's not perfectly round, and it just cover it. It'll make your life 100% easier. So you get your axle welded in there, or your spindle welded in your axle. If you have trailer brakes on all four, you have this little square bracket that needs to get welded to your axles to hold your trailer brakes. So what I did is I put my trailer brakes, I bolted my trailer brakes to that little square bracket, slid it on there, slid my hub on there with the bearings in it, tightened the little bolt up, finger tight, and then slid the brakes into the hub to the point that I wanted them so that you could spin the hub and it wouldn't grind up against the brake backing pad. Just give a little bit of air gap there. Have somebody help you hold it, tack weld it, look all the way around it, make some adjustments, tack weld it again, then take the whole thing apart so you're just left with that square tack welded to your axle, and go around and solid weld it so that it's not going anywhere. Um, there is a little bit of slop in that square bracket. What I did to make it square with the axle is I took the bracket and I turned it until the corners hit. So all four corners, you had the same gap on all four sides. All four corners were hitting in the same place. And that's where I tack welded it. And that made it centered on the axle. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but that's the only way I can explain it. So hopefully you understand. The next thing with your leaf springs to hold your axle to your leaf spring. Your leaf springs have a bolt that hold them together right in the center. Sometimes it's a bolt, sometimes it's a cold rivet, depending on who made your leaf springs. Now that's supposed to sit in a hole in your axle. People drill the holes in their axle and they set it on there and they use U-bolts to tighten it on. That little nipple that comes off your leaf spring that goes in the hole in your axle keeps your axles from sliding back and forth on your leaf springs when you hit potholes. Regardless of how tight you tighten your U-bolts, you're not going to be able to tighten your U-bolts tight enough. So you need that little nipple to sit into a hole. I didn't want to drill a hole in my axle. I felt that would weaken the axle. So what I did is I went down to Lowe's and I got, it's a 1.5 by 1.5 square plate with a round hole in the middle. I don't know what it's used for in construction, but you'll find it in like where all the brackets are for building trusses and stuff like that. You'll find these thick, I think they're 1/4 inch thick metal squares with a round hole in the middle of them. I had to auger the hole out just a little bit to fit my leaf spring bolt. That thing on the leaf spring, my axle on top of it, and then I tack welded my axle to that piece of square plate. Pulled my axle back out of the trailer, flipped it over, and welded a decent sized weld on each side. I didn't want to solid weld it because as you weld, the weld heats up. As it cools, it shrinks and it bends metal. The hotter you weld, the more it's going to bend that metal as it cools. You don't want to bend your axle. So I didn't put a big weld on those plates. You don't need a big weld. It's just there to hold it in place on your leaf spring. So get a nice solid weld and let it go. I wouldn't solid weld it all the way around it. Just a nice good weld on two sides and you should be okay. And then paint your axles up, and if you've already got your frame the way you want it, if you're just rebuilding axles, paint your axles up and slide them in there and you should be good to go. I think that's going to be it for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I can show you some more of this trailer build hopefully soon. Thanks for watching, guys.